Hello and welcome to In the Spotlight with Kyocera, the definitive podcast on digital disruption in the print industry. I'm Louella Fernandez, Director of Kyocera, and today I'm joined by Steve Pearce, Group Head of Marketing at Kyocera UK. So our topic for today is green hushing, and we'll be discussing why some companies are staying silent on their sustainability performance and Kyocera's perspective on this emerging trend. So welcome to the show. Steve, it's great to have you here today.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the invite.
Yeah, so could we get started if you could tell us a bit about yourself and your career history and your role at Kyocera?
Okay, well, yeah, thank you. So, yeah, Steve Pearce, I'm Group Head of Marketing at Kyocera. But my career started in this industry 25 years ago. So I think I was the first year of student fees, tuition fees at university. So I took a very spontaneous but lucky decision to take a year out after my A-levels because I didn't really know what I wanted to do at university. I knew I loved marketing, but always felt like a salesperson. So I didn't really know where to go. So anyway, I took myself to the job centre, a recruitment agency, and said, I'd like some jobs within marketing, please. I'd like some temping work to try and find out what I liked. So 2 weeks later, I joined a company called Ricoh. And that was 25 years ago. So I joined the industry that long ago. And yeah, Ricoh really took me on a journey, a fantastic company to work for. And actually, I never went back to uni. So they agreed to pay my tuition fees, which I'd done in the evening. So I'm still incredibly grateful. Hopefully you can hear that. And yeah, and I started to meet some great people in this industry. And the last being, I'm sure everybody will know the person I'm about to say on this call, Chaz Maloney. And, the late Chaz Maloney. And he really put that fire in my belly of marketing. And anyone ever had the opportunity to speak to Chaz, it's that passion, it's that love of what he did. And that really fired me up. So yeah, I left Ricoh sort of buoyant. I had my qualifications and I joined Samsung. I joined Samsung in about 2004. And that was the real rise of Samsung print and the multi-express machine. So yeah, once again, opportunity knocked. I took the opportunity and I started working for some more inspirational people. I've always been really lucky to have mentors in industry throughout my life. And there's Nigel Allen, who will know, and Martin Fairman. And these people have really shaped me into where I am today. So I did get one bit of advice about 10 years ago. And it was from a aforementioned name. It said to me, who's acted as a mentor to me, Steve, to be a great marketeer, you have to have been a salesperson. You can't give sales enablement tools to a job you've never done. So I joined a company in a sales role, which was Lexmark. And I spent 8 years at Lexmark, very successful years. Once again, great people. And then I've ended my career, continued my career at Kyocera. So with that experience I've gained from people and my job roles, I'm now Group Head of Marketing. And that means I look after the Kyocera channel business, but also importantly for me and my career, also look after Anadata and MCL. So, we're looking after MSPs and MPS. So I'm now, marketing cybersecurity and cloud and all of these things. So yeah, 25-year journey. I'm here today. And my new role, born from that, I suppose, that Chaz-like passion, is green. And I think I never thought I'd expect to say that, but I've become the bastion. I am Kyocera's Greta, if you like. And yeah, so here I am to face your questions, really.
Yeah, that's really a really interesting career history. I didn't know that. And I do remember Chaz very well because I worked at Canon. And like you say, he was a great person and so enthusiastic.
Yeah, and sadly.
So yeah, very sad. But you're very interesting to, like I say, hear about your career journey. And you're now the pushing the green envelope, so to speak, at Kyocera. And you published recently a great article on green hushing. And it wasn't something I was completely familiar with. I know it's a term that's relatively new in terms of popularity more recently, but I think it started a few years ago. And it really has emerged as this kind of counter trend to greenwashing, where organisations are almost talking up their claims around sustainability, and it's really more about companies that are actually trying to keep their environmental performance claims more quiet or under the radar because of a fear of backlash of being, I guess, being thought of to be greenwashing. So it's really interesting that sort of the two areas. So could you tell us a bit more about what you covered in your article and your views on green hushing?
Yeah, so there's differing sources of where the word was first coined, but we have that it was first used and published as a thesis in the University of Surrey by a guy called Xavier Font in 2017, and he done a real in-depth study, and it was actually based on companies in the Peak District. And I'll tell you this because I think it will really frame what it means. So he spoke to these companies that, by the natural nature, geology and nature of the area, it's very outdoorsy and very farm foody and sustainable. And the companies that he spoke to one director, and his riposte was, well, only 50% of my supply chain is sustainable or circular. Therefore, I'm really scared of publishing it's only 50% because I'll get a backlash on the other 50%. However, his competitors had zero. So it was really framed then to say, even before greenwashing was on the news, and it is often on the news, and I'm sure we'll come on to the companies that have brought it to the front of the news articles, but it really did even start then, where people were conscious about boasting because of the fear of backlash, which is probably where I spend 50% of my time now, because, I think greenwashing is a problem. I think it's been called out. That behaviour has been called out, and called out successfully. And therefore, we've also got, as humans, we've got, even companies, we've got a natural tendency to back away from the confrontation or the accusation. So I would say I'm just as fearful of green hushing as I am greenwashing. And if I may elaborate why. Companies are doing really good things. Sometimes green hushing, is unintentional. So companies don't think about the good eco benefits of what they're doing because it's inherently built into their product through R&D. So therefore it's not mentioned. And we've tended to focus, especially in our industry, we've had two axes we work from: price and performance. And never has there been a third axis, really, sort of about consciousness, circularity, CSR goals. So I think that axis has become 3 or 4 dimensional, and it is becoming a bigger thing. So yeah, I think green hushing is a real result of people being called out for greenwashing. And my fear is that if we don't share the good that we're doing with our customers, with our colleagues, with, importantly, as we find, potential employees, because my daughter's leaving university soon, and she'll be conscious about what company she joins, and what the CSR, what the volunteering is. And I think it's a bigger CSR thing. So I think that companies that choose to hush are going to miss out on talent, customers, and retention. So I think it's a big thing. And, the reason why I would put myself front and center and up for debate really is because I want our industry to become greener. So if companies like mine don't share all of the good things we're doing, and also advertise some of the stuff that we can all do, but maybe just in a different or more clever way, if I'm allowed to say that, then we're not moving forward together as an industry. And we must, you know, and I think, Louella, you know better than anybody, print trends and your forecast for next year. I think I've got one of your print sustainability trends 2023 in front of me. So 69% of end users you surveyed said it's really important for their suppliers to help them measure what their green impact is. So if we must do this as an industry. So hopefully, you know, outcome and the purpose for us today is to say, come on, guys, let's stop, you know, accusing each other of greenwashing or remaining silent. And let's become a green industry. Let's hit our customer demands.
Yeah, and I think that's a really interesting point you mentioned about the different dimensions that are considered, and there needs to be more dimensions to that, like purpose and the planet, and I think, you know, really, you know, as you say, with our research, we can see that the print industry does have circular principles quite strongly embedded in it for many years, and some vendors have been more vocal about what they're doing in terms of circularity and others less so. But as you say, it's pretty standardized across the, you know, the industry in terms of how products are manufactured, the supply chain and so on. And I think some vendors are doing a better job than others in terms of really articulating that. And I think, and you know, I totally agree. And, you know, actually, you know, the report we've just released. So on one hand, we're seeing that companies, like you say, nearly 70% of companies, they're not only scrutinizing their suppliers' credentials, but they also want those suppliers to help them reduce their environmental impact. But actually, the top challenge we've seen is that they don't have enough environmental data from their suppliers to be able to make decisions around technology. And yeah, there's a lot of confusion around the actual environmental impact of the printer, from the production to the paper usage, energy.
Yes.
And I think every vendor sort of talks about it in a slightly different way. So I think, you know, in terms of what Kyocera are doing, because I know it's always had a very strong heritage around sustainability, you know, the fact your products are called ECOSYS. And, you know, I think we talked a bit about that on the prep call. So can you maybe talk a bit more about Kyocera's approach in the market around the actual hardware, as well as how it's helping its customers?
And my opening gambit to this would be, I think that we've been prime suspect of not advertising all the stuff that you mentioned that we've always done well, because maybe our focus went back to the original X and Y axis of performance and price, and probably not advertised or marketed the stuff that the product could do already. So let me give you a journey of our machines. I'm pleased to say that only this year, 2 of our main manufacturing plants are now 100% renewable energy. So we're fortunate, we're a solar power company, right? So you know, that obviously helps in terms of investment, but we are 100% renewable energy. In fact, when I said that to somebody, they said, what about your other plants? And that's a prime example. That's a prime example, right? So, you know, we're 100% renewable energy manufacturing. They make the machines with up to 30% recycled content at source. So that's our product today, of which 99% is then fully recyclable again. We never say 100, because I think that may be unachievable because of contamination and toner particles, etc. So it's 99% recyclable. Importantly, probably the bit that we've really missed out on is that the machine is delivered to us in World Star award-winning packaging. And I think, if I may just talk around that slightly, our boxes are made from pulped cardboard content, and they're shipped. So much R&D went into how do you ship an MFP or printer from Japan, and we're not hiding that. It is made there. It's shipped over in recycled packaging. So we may have a problem, because I visit our channel partners. So I've seen that some of our competitors' products arrive in polystyrene. So, and that's a big problem for the channel, because the majority of polystyrene is buried. And in fact, you have to turn up the heat to 210 to 250 degrees Fahrenheit to melt it down to recycling it. So, we may use low heat in a machine, but I think that's a prime example where we haven't really marketed all of the stuff that we're doing well. And it arrives, and we've got the sleep modes that are pretty much de facto. I call it the Lexus effect. Remember when Lexus had, electric windows and built-in sat-nav? It's like, wow, but you can't buy a car without that now. So, the technology is almost at saturation point. So, you've got your sensors when you walk up to the machine and sleep modes, etc. I think the important thing is that we share that data. You mentioned about customers wanting that, and we actively share what energy is used in the printing of paper, right? And we give them tools to scan and digitize the documents, as all of our industry do. But I think the important thing is about that open kimono approach to say, look, this is who we are, this is what we're doing, and we will help you reduce thereafter. So the machines are, incredibly environmentally conscious. I won't say eco-friendly, but I will say eco-friendlier than they ever have been. And I think that's there's a nuance in my parlance there that one you can get called out on and one you can't, right? Because you can't say it's eco-friendly. It's not helping the environment, but it's friendlier than what it always has been.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting point actually around eco labels and all the different kite marks and so on. And I think, like you say, pretty much every vendor and every device has very similar types of certification, and it's from a user perspective they're pretty much the same across the board. And I think the opportunity is for vendors to really talk more about the whole supply chain and the value chain. But interestingly, you talked about the packaging, which I think is something that most customers wouldn't be aware of. And I'm curious actually on that point, because you talked about your channel, and obviously Kyocera is focused on the channel to really deliver these kind of sustainable initiatives and products. Are you seeing that the channel are embracing sustainability within their own organizations? Has there been any pushback on potentially, the packaging, like you mentioned, and other elements that they may be working with other vendors?
Yeah, I think once again, I'm going to use an axis. We use an axis. I think it's more like a parallel tram line. I find it very hard to separate cost saving and efficiency from ecological cost saving and efficiency. I'm sure you like I, Louella, shout in the house, turn them lights off, and it's not Blackpool illuminations and all them things our parents said, right? But in reality, they didn't want light pollution. They wanted to save money. So they are intrinsically linked, and you've got that driver for our channel partners that want cost saving methods, as we know in the climate and economic climate we're in. But also, there's a pent up demand, as your studies show. So these are salespeople. They're successful salespeople, and a lot of them have been at a long time. They will deliver supply and demand, right? They understand it. So, and then we get the what I call maybe the laggard. I'd probably put myself in the box of been in the industry a long time, definitely more grey than when I started, and eco stuff's all for our children, and et cetera, et cetera. But actually, we've seen a lot of buy-in. So we've had a couple of partners. We've had just recently, we've worked with a partner down in Devon who have joined the journey with us. They've embraced the messaging that we've put out, absolutely utilised the tools, the support, the tremendous work my marketing team have given them, and they've just certified themselves carbon neutral. So they're the only carbon neutral copier vendor or business solutions dealer, I think they call it, so a copier dealer in the Southwest. So they've now got that point of difference, and they're pumping up their chests and they're going to their customers saying, we can make a real difference. I would say it's interesting talking to them, actually, because here's another example of them green hushing themselves in the past. So where they've said to me, I said, what things are you going to cut back on? Because this is a marathon, not a sprint. Okay, so, we've just launched some Kyocera bamboo socks, and I'll send you some. Well, they're fetching, they're bright green, right? So we said, we've done socks because it's about lowering a footprint one step at a time. So we're acknowledging we're on a journey. Yeah, we are not perfect, absolutely not. But we want to help our partners on the journey, right? And as a vendor, I think we're obliged to do so. So they said to me, well, the thing is, we've actually sent out less engineers to fix machines. And as a vendor, my first reaction was, well, that's because our machines don't break down, right? And we laughed that one off. But in reality, what they've done is they've decided to take their top engineers off the road and move them into a triage-like role within the office. So 25% of all of their service calls that come into their building are now triaged online. They're not driving, they're not polluting. And guess what? They're saving money at the same time. So back to my first point, there's an example of intrinsically linking cost and efficiency with green, but also they hadn't recognized the good they were already doing. It just needed to be shown to them.
Yeah, and I think that's a great example of how channel partners can really embrace those kind of initiatives and, as you say, have that point of differentiation that they can demonstrate to their customers, by having less engineers, that's reducing that, or engineers not traveling on the road is reducing that carbon footprint for them as well. And I think I wanted to pick up on a couple of points because you mentioned that kind of relationship between cost and environmental benefits. And I think that's something else we've seen in our studies, that most businesses, regardless of size, will see that there is a real correlation between reducing costs and reducing environmental impact, because obviously if you're reducing waste, if you're reducing paper usage, if you're reducing energy usage as well, you're ultimately reducing costs as well. So they are very closely linked. And I think there's still a lack of awareness from customers around all the things they can do around their print environment to really lower those environmental costs. So we talked about devices that have got maybe high recycled content or they're more energy efficient. But do you have any examples also of, and you touched upon it briefly, in actual solutions where it's helping them minimize their paper usage? Because we are seeing that one of the big drivers for digitization is sustainability, because there is that perception that reducing print volumes and paper usage will obviously lower environmental impact. So I know that's a challenging situation for traditional print manufacturers, but I'd be interested to hear your views on that.
Yeah, slightly controversial, this one, actually. So I think that, so let's take one of our customers today. They're printing on our Task Alpha 15000C, and they're printing on that with recycled paper, and they're using all of the energy modes, but actually we're reforesting all the paper that they use. So we reforest the paper via Print Releaf into trees planted in the UK. So we always come up against, this is the other thing, and I'm on a tangent, but, you're just planting trees. Absolutely we are. In fact, we've planted over 12,000. We'll continue to do so. And we're, increasing biodiversity, and then trees will be there longer, when I'm gone. So, I think printing doesn't have to be that bad. All of our products, as we say, whether, it's Epson, Ricoh, whatever it might be, they're all incredibly energy efficient, environmentally efficient. And if we do things like carbon offsetting any of the energy used, because it's better to do so than not, and we reforest the paper, we've got real governance over what that print job looks like. And I say that because the governance over where a digital document resides is often ambiguous at best. So, that document, let's just say a VAT bill has to stay available for 7 years. If you're in the pharmaceutical industry, it has to be for 90 years, for instance. So there's different nuances between industries, but it's digital and it's sitting on a server, producing heat and using energy to maintain itself for up to 90 years, where the printed version would potentially have sat in a file before. So I think the governance over what the carbon footprint of a digital document is something that needs investigating to be able to fairly compare them, because the idea of this digital document that surfs in a cloud somewhere and you can pull it down, actually, when you put your mind to it and think about it, is it better? And I think as an industry, we need to work closer with cloud hosting companies and digital ECM companies to understand that thing. And the only reason why I'm passionate about that is because I haven't seen the evidence yet. I get lots of estimation to approximate calculators or an average server. There's no real governance over the actual data. So, if I phone Canon and say, your image runner XYZ, they'll be able to tell me exactly what the sleep mode was, what the operation. Thank you very much as an end user, but I don't think I could do that with a digital document. However, it is the future. Despite my love of print, because I do have it here, is that we will provide more and more tools. And I think akin to the external sat nav in the car, as I mentioned earlier, where it become embedded, I think most of what we see as third-party satellite bolt-ons to our products will become inherent in the technology over the next couple of years, and it will be just par for the course to scan, retrieve bidirectional communication, metadata, authentication methods will become part of the device. So we're providing them solutions today. So we happen to host our own private, public, and hybrid cloud. We happen to offer endpoint security for cyber attacks, et cetera. And I think that's probably where we're helping greatly with our customers. So whilst away from the eco side, I think the cyber side is some of the solutions that will be helping them have confidence to scan and retrieve more safely.
And I think that's a really great point. I'm glad you mentioned the carbon footprint, lack of evidence on a digital versus a paper document, because I read somewhere, I can't remember the exact statistics, but just sending an email has such a huge carbon footprint, in terms of the email trail. Even if you just say thank you in an email, it's encouraged not to do that, because like you say, it's going back and forward to a server somewhere in the cloud. And I think there's been a perception, for you and I've been in the industry a long time, and you would have that footer at the end, please don't print this because we want to save trees or whatever. And I think, the younger generation haven't actually grown up with that kind of approach. And what we're seeing in our research is that they're less likely to think paper is bad for the environment than the older generation, because we've kind of been brought up with that. Whereas digital products, I think there's a much more negative perception with digital products, like phones and laptops, which, we're replacing every few years. And I think it is, definitely a challenge for the industry to get some consistent standardized data on what is the carbon footprint of a digital document, a paper document. And I don't think there will ever be standardization, but I think it's up to vendors to at least provide some clarity around comparing those, how solutions can help reduce paper usage, they want to minimise wasteful printing rather than get rid of printing altogether.
Absolutely. And it may take a driver, Louella. It may be, political reasons or put in statute or whatever it might be, but until such time. But I think you've really highlighted something that I think we all need to do as an industry. And I think that's about that disposable technology. My youngest daughter's asked for an iPad for Christmas, and you think, oh, they only last 4 years, and the operating system doesn't. Oh God, we all go through this as parents. So I think that's something that we could do better as an industry anyway, because we are offsetting. Our machines are carbon neutral, right? We're talking about the ECOSYS machine. They're carbon neutral because we understand the journey that they've been on to arrive to the customer. But we need to put more emphasis. We've done all the bad bit in producing it. So how long can that device last? And, I think we're governed a lot by lease terms and how long we should be financing. Maybe, it's a funny, could we do it over 10 years? Are the machines capable of lasting that long? What warranty procedure would we have to ramp up to do so? But I think as an industry, cars, you remember, I keep using car analogies, but Kia brought out the 7-year warranty car. Now that seems to be, I think Volvo doing it, et cetera, et cetera. So someone needs to push the boundaries and hopefully we'll be in a position to make our machines last longer as well.
Yeah, and I think that, I think there are really valid analogies with the car industry and, the standard lease being 3 or 4 years, but, and then you just automatically will change it. And I think it's the same, like you say, with MPS, is that can we build in more longevity into those devices? And, with paper, ultimately there's no built-in obsolescence, like you say, that you have with the iPhone, and it doesn't run out of battery. And I think, maybe I feel like there will be a bit of a renaissance going back towards paper. And, maybe it's a generational thing, but I still prefer to read magazines, a hard copy rather than staring at a screen all the time. So I think there'll always be a room for print, and it's not about it being the bad guy of the environmental.
No. I think we'll find our happy medium of content services, what that can bring, remote working, hybrid fueling, work, all of these great things. And I think, as we get a more and more dispersed, a new generation of worker, especially in companies the size of mine, we can't all live in Reading. We're a national company, and we absolutely rely on content services, and we'll continue to do so.
Yeah, and I just wanted to pick up back on the greenwashing, because the CSRD, the Corporate Sustainability Reporting Directive, which will impact most regions, and even in the US, it's having an impact. So do you think that will help with the greenwashing, because it will stipulate that companies have to share their environmental metrics? Because, even when we work on our sustainability leaders report and we're looking at the different information from different vendors, it's a complete minefield. I'm just wondering whether that will encourage or almost force vendors to actually be more open about their, environmental performance, and kind of lead to more transparency around their environmental data.
I think, like I say, I think it will spawn two trends really. So one, hopefully that people in this industry and outside will go, oh, actually, like we did with our packaging, that's actually really good. And we haven't been talking about that. So if you've got a report on it, it will highlight it. And two, I hope that it will drive the good change. So we've, for the last 2 years, published our carbon reduction plan. And I know you've kindly read that, Louella, because we're incredibly proud of it here. Because we're saying, look, this is where we are. This is our target. It's a marathon, not a sprint. I use that term again. But importantly, we're prepared to share that publicly, to be analysed, absorbed, argued against, but it's a great conversation, whether it's our customers or our channel partners. And I think the biggest challenge we've got is people. So I'm really fortunate that our CEO here, Rod Tonner-Barthett, I know you know very well, Louella, is also incredibly passionate. You don't want to get us two in the same room when it comes to green. And I think probably his real drive is, become a granddad, and he become conscious about the future, and it's really changed his mindset to it all. And I would say that we've got to make it cultural, not commercial. So that's my biggest advice, really, is that in this building, it's a culture and it's not done for commercial reasons.
Yeah, it's all about people ultimately, and that's also how you attract and retain talent as well, as you mentioned earlier. So I think,
but it has to be from the top. It has to be from the top down, because it's not something that a green conscious person in your business can fuel. It's too big. Like I say, very fortunate CEOs behind it, pushing hard, and it enables the journey to be a lot easier, and also gives us the confidence to come on calls, right?
Yeah. And I think it's been really fascinating, actually. I know it's always great having a conversation with you, Steve, but I think it's just really demonstrates Kyocera's commitment in the UK, in particular, to sustainability. And obviously, you've got your carbon neutral MPS, which I think is something that's very differentiated in the UK market in particular. So, looking forward to hearing more about progress next year. But I just wanted to come on to what's next for Kyocera in terms of sustainability and, strategy for next year. And also, could you share a prediction for, we're in prediction season at the moment, so a prediction in general for the print industry for 2024?
Yeah, so I think we are, as an operation, we're going to be looking at different things along our journey to net zero and solar. And we've just recently moved our toner recycling to the UK, which was a step forward, because it was going to Germany before. There you go. I'm prepared to say that. It's now local, and our dealers. I think the biggest difference we can make, as you say, with our focus, our direct touch with customers is a lot easier to influence, but it's the channel partners we want to help take on the journey. So I think over the next year, you'll see more and more Kyocera channel partners join us on the run, the marathon. They're coming on board, and it's, we will do all we can to promote that and support them and give them the tools to do so. So I'd say that would be one of our big focuses. I also know that the inherent product itself is going to get environmentally friendlier as they are released. I also know that we will continue to offset the carbon production and the shipping, and also 5 years of its consumables on all products launched next year. So we're committed to that. And we will continue to do so. So yeah, that's probably the two big things, but we'll definitely stay channel focused. Predictions is more of a hope and a call to arms, Louella, is that I hope from this call that when I go to the awards ceremonies this year, and the events we go to, I hope I'm approached by my peers from other vendors to say, can you tell me a little bit more? Can you help me? Because I hope that next year more of the other vendors join us, because like I say, my ambition and our company's ambition is to make the industry eco-friendlier, not for it to become a flag waving exercise of we're greener than you and I'm greener than you and your machines are hotter than mine. And look, how do we give customers tools and measurements, as you say, when it comes to reporting? Look, I'm happy for a fair fight that the customer makes a conscious decision what product and what vendor suits them best.
Yeah, and I think that's really needed, like you say, in the industry. And I think the nature of the print industry is that it's always been very proprietary in nature, and every vendor's obviously got their own strategy and product development and R&D. But I think now there's an opportunity for more partnership and collaboration and open ecosystems, because that's the way the technology industry is going, and the print industry needs to catch up with that. So,
Well, Louella, maybe you're in prime position to start that discussion.
I think so. I was just thinking, I had a light bulb moment there. So.
I can see it turn on. What about if I organised it? But like I say, I am happy to sit in a room with the other vendors, and I will openly share all of the things that we're doing. Because at the end of the day, it is about the future. It's about Rod's grandchildren. It's about my, it is an important thing. And as we jumped on the call, Louella, we seem to be in winter. And I only spoke to you last week, and we was in autumnal sunshine in London. So you can't ignore it. We have to do something. And, if we can leave a legacy as a business and as a human and as a head, group head of marketing, I'd love my legacy to be, do you know what? He was a funny guy, but wow, he helped make that change. And I think we can do it as a collective.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that's a really great point to end our conversation today. Thanks so much for joining the podcast. Really appreciate you taking the time, and look forward to speaking to you again in the near future. So thank you for joining today's episode of In the Spotlight with Kyocera. For more information, please go to kyocera.com and be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks again for joining, and I look forward to seeing you in Series 8 in the new year.